Docker images are built by reading instructions from a text-based file known as Dockerfile. So in this video, I will teach you how to properly create Dockerfile with right syntax, also explaining different Dockerfile instructions with a hands-on demo. So make sure you like this video and watch it till the end. Let's start. So here is the code for the JavaScript application we created in the previous Docker tutorial video. Make sure to check it out if you haven't watched it yet. And notice the Dockerfile here. We all know to create a Docker image for this application, we need to have a Dockerfile. And to create this Dockerfile, we need to follow proper syntax. Also need to know what are these different instructions required to create Docker image. And in this video, I'm going to explain you exactly that on how to create Dockerfile, what is the proper syntax and what are these different instructions with a hands-on demo. So let's start. So now we know to create a Docker image for an application, we start with creating a file that will have all the instructions, and the name of the file should be exactly this, which is Dockerfile with D capital. And this is also mentioned in the official documentation. If you check Docker documentation, they say the default file name to use for a Dockerfile is Dockerfile. And we recommend using the default Dockerfile for your project's primary Dockerfile. So whenever creating a Dockerfile for your application, make sure the name is exactly this. And you should also see this symbol here if you have Docker extension installed in VS Code. So if you check the Dockerfile for our application here, inside this Dockerfile, the first line is the comment. So we can create a comment in Dockerfile using the hash symbol, which is very similar to how you do it in Python or any other programming language. So to Dockerfile, you can create comment using hash. On the second line, we have a from instruction and then some argument here. So Dockerfile format is instruction and argument, instruction and argument. Format of Dockerfile is instruction and argument. This instruction is usually in capital letters. Although it is not case sensitive, Docker recommends you to have instructions in capital letters so that you can differentiate instructions and argument more easily. So now we have learned to create a comment in Dockerfile, you use the hash symbol, and the format includes instructions with arguments. So instructions and argument. Docker provides us with all these different instructions that you can put inside your Dockerfile to define how you want to create your Docker image. And usually the from instruction is the first instruction that you will use to create your Dockerfile. So I'm going to say from, and this instruction is used to define the base image on which you want to create your Docker image. And you can find all the different images on Docker Hub. So inside Docker Hub, you can find different images that you want to use as your base image. For example, let's say you have an application that requires Python to be installed in the machine. You can use Python as the base image. And to use that, I'm going to just search for Python here. You will find Python official image. So this is the official image of Python. And to use this as the base image, I can just specify that in here. So I can say from Python. And if I want to use a particular version of Python, let's say I want to use 3.11 or 3.12 or 3.13, I can check that in the tags here. So you can also install a particular version of Python and you can set that as your base image by specifying colon and then the tag name. So let's say if you want to use 3.11.1 bookworm here, you just need to say from Python colon and then this. So this is how you can set the base image for your application. Now these images are also created using Dockerfile. So if you open this up, you can see the Dockerfile instructions required to create this particular image. So you can see 3.11 bookworm Dockerfile was created using all these different instructions. And the base image for this image here is buildpack deps bookworm. Similarly, if it should take at any other image, let's say this Alpine image here. You can see the base image used is Alpine 3.18. So every image is created using Dockerfile. And for this demo, let's try to use Alpine as the base image here. So I'm going to say from Alpine colon 3.18. So now we have a Dockerfile here which has a from instruction saying to use Alpine 3.18 as the base image. And to confirm how from instruction works or to check if it actually uses Alpine as the base image, I'm going to go ahead with creating an image from this particular Dockerfile. So to create an image, we use the docker build command. So I'll say docker build -t my image dot. So I'm saying create a Docker image from this particular Dockerfile using the docker build command. Once I run this, it will go ahead and create it. So Docker images are created using layers. Right now we only have one instruction here. So there's only one layer. And now Docker image is created. So I'm going to confirm by running docker images command. You can see here's the image which is now created with the name my image. So to check what operating system is used inside this particular image. So in Linux, if you want to check what operating system are you using, you run the command cat /etc/os-release, and this will give us that this is a particular operating system. This is my local machine, which is Ubuntu 22. So I get this. I'm going to run the same command inside this image here. And to run the command, I'm going to say Docker run. Name of the image is my image here. And I'll say cat /etc/os-release, the same command that I'm running. This will tell us what operating system is inside this particular image. Once I run this, you can see it says Alpine Linux 3.18, which means the from instruction actually uses this as the base image here. And this is how from instruction works. So now we have understood that the from instruction in Dockerfile is used to specify the base image, which can be pulled from a Docker container registry, either Docker Hub, GCR, ECR, etc. So using from instruction, you can specify what base image do you want to use for the Docker image that is going to be created using Dockerfile. But this is not all. If you look here in the Docker documentation, from can appear multiple times inside a single Docker file to either create multiple Docker images or to create multi-stage Docker image, which you will be learning very soon. You can also give name to each stage using as keyword. So you'll say from Python 3.9 as build 1. So this was from instruction that lets you specify the base image. Now let's move to the next instruction, which is the run instruction. Using run, you can execute commands during the image build process. So let's say you want to install something on this Alpine image, or you need to print out a message. You can use run instruction to do that. Run instruction lets you run a command. So you can use the run and then specify the command that you want to run on your image. Now let's consider I want to run the echo command on top of this Alpine image. So I can use run, because run instruction lets you execute any command on top of this current image. So I'll say run echo hello. And this is how you can specify the command you want to run on this particular image. But the run command works in two different formats, which is the shell form and the exec form. To show you the difference between them, here is an example. So this is how you can use the shell format to run a command, and this is how you can use the exec format. In the shell format, you don't need to define what shell are you trying to use, but in the exec format, you need to define what shell do you want to use. So here we have /bin/sh for Linux. For Windows, it is going to be CMD like this, because it uses command prompt. So there are two ways for you to define the run command, either using shell format or using the exec format. This is also going to work, and it will also work if you try to use it this way. For now, I'm going to install curl on this particular image. So I can say run apk add curl. This is similar to apt install curl in Ubuntu. As this is Alpine, we are going to say run apk add curl. And this will go ahead with installing curl on the image. And to test this out, I'm going to run the same command, which was docker build -t my image dot. Once I run this, you should be able to see that the run is also executed here. So we have two layers now. The first one is the from, and the second one is here, run apk add curl. But you can also check all the different layers by running docker history command on the particular image. So I'll say docker history my image, and you can see these are all the layers executed for the image. So we have three layers here. These two are from the from image, and this one is from the run that we have executed now. So run /bin/sh-c add apk add curl. So now the curl is installed inside our machine using run command, because run lets you execute any command on top of the current image. Now moving on, the next Dockerfile instruction that we're going to look into is workdir instruction. Using this instruction, you can set the path on which you want to work. So you can see the explanation here. Set the working directory for any subsequent add, copy, CMD, entry point instruction that follows inside the Dockerfile. To explain you this in better terms, for now I'm inside my local file, I'm working inside the directory, which is inside projects folder inside Dockerfile tutorial. Similarly, if you want to work inside a particular directory or a folder, you can set that using workdir. Right now, if I show you what folder are we working inside the image, we can check that by running docker run my image and pwd to print out the working directory. So the image is using the / path, which is this path here. But let's say you want to use the downloads folder. So you can set that using workdir. So I'm going to say set the working directory to downloads. So right now let's check what is inside the downloads folder, which you can do using ls command. So I'll say ls/downloads. And it says no such file or directory. So you don't need to worry, because working directory can also set the path, but also create new directories if they are not already there. So now using workdir, I'm going to set the working directory as /downloads, but if it's not there, it will also create it for me. So I'm going to test that out. Let's save this and create an image. So I'll say docker build -t my image and dot. So very soon it will create an image, and you can see this is the third layer, which is the WORKDIR layer. Now if I do pwd command that we ran earlier to check out what current directory is it using, once I do pwd, you can see it's using the downloads folder, which means it has created the folder and also set it as the working directory to be used by the subsequent commands, which could be add, copy, cmd, etc. So it's all clear now. The working directory sets the working directory to be used by all these different instructions that follow the WORKDIR command. The next Docker instructions that we're going to learn is the user instruction. User instruction lets you set the username or the user ID along with group ID if you want to as the default user and group for the next commands. By default, when you don't set any user, the Docker image is using the root user as the default user, and I can show you that. So when I run whoami command on my image, I should be able to see root as the default user. So Docker run my image and whoami command is going to show us root is the default user. But using user command, we can set any other user. So let's say I want to set the user as CloudChamp, and if I were to try running the command again by creating an image, I should be able to get CloudChamp as the user. But as CloudChamp is not created, obviously we will get an error saying no matching entries or there is no user named as CloudChamp. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a user inside my container using the run command, because we know run command is used to execute any commands on the top of image. So I will run the add user command saying add user -d, name of the user, which is CloudChamp. And now if I try to build the image again, this time I'm creating a user. Along with creation, I'm also setting the user to be used as CloudChamp for the next instruction. So now this container should be running with the user as CloudChamp. So let's try to check that. When I run the same whoami command, this time in place of root, it should show us CloudChamp because we're using the user instruction. So this is how user instruction works. It will let you set the user or the user ID. Optionally, I can also set the group if I want to, but that's how user instruction works. In Windows, you can create a new user using the net user add command and then set that user using the user instruction. So this is how you can do it in Windows. And for the next Dockerfile instruction, let's try to build a Windows image. So I'm going to remove this and add the code for Windows image. So here are a new set of Dockerfile instructions that we are going to use to create a new Docker image. We have three instructions, the from, run, and run. From instruction is used to set the base image that we know, and we are using PowerShell as the base image from Microsoft. You can find the image here on Docker Hub. So this is the PowerShell image by Microsoft, and this is what we are using for our new Docker image. Along with this, we have two run commands. So this command is used to create a folder named as /demo, and you can see it's a Linux command because we know mkdir in Linux is used to create folders. Similarly, we also have another command here, which is the run command. Run command is used to execute any commands on top of the current image. So in this command here, we are saying hello world, and then we are putting this message inside demo/message.txt. So this is a Linux command, but this is a Windows command. So how can Docker handle two different commands from two different operating systems? Let's check that. For now, I'm going to go ahead with creating an image from this Docker file. So I'll say docker build -t new image and dot. Once I run this, it will go ahead and start creating it. But you can see there's an error here on the third instruction. So we got an error saying failed to solve process /bin/-c. So this command is still using the bash shell instead of using the Windows shell, which could be PowerShell or command prompt. So let's try to change that, and we can change the shell in Dockerfile using the shell instruction. So if you look here in the documentation, shell instruction in Dockerfile can be used to change what kind of shell do you want to execute any command. If you see here, in this example here, you can use shell to define that you want to use a PowerShell, or you want to use a CMD, or you can use the default one, which is /bin/sh for Linux. So now, as this command is PowerShell command, we can set the shell as PowerShell before we run this command. So I'm going to put the shell instruction here and set the shell as PowerShell rather than using the /bin/sh, which it is doing by default. So I'll go ahead and copy this thing here and paste it in my code. So now we are using the shell instruction to set the shell as PowerShell for the next command, which is this one here. Now I'm going to save it and then run the docker build command again to see if we get the same error. Okay, we got the same error. So instead of PowerShell, I think it has to be PWSH, something like this. Now I'm going to save this and run it again. So this time we got no error. And if I check the file inside this, I'm going to say Docker run new image cat this path. So you can see the message is hello world, which means this command has executed successfully when you use the shell command to change the shell from /bin/sh to PowerShell here. So using shell command, you can define what shell do you want to use for the next Dockerfile instructions here. So till now in this Dockerfile tutorial, we have learned many Dockerfile instructions like from, run, WORKDIR, user, shell, and a lot more. How can we set environment variables? Setting environment variables for running an application is very common. And you can do that in Dockerfile using the ENV instruction. So the ENV instruction lets you set the environment variable to a specified value. ENV and then key equals to value. So let's say app_host is going to be 0.0.0.0. Similarly, if you want to add more such environment variables, let's say for your app port, so you can do that by adding more such ENV instructions in the Dockerfile. Optionally, if you want to have more such environment variables, you can add it directly in the same single instruction by saying or adding this / here. So using this, you can now put more environment variables like this. So let's say ABC equals to XYZ. And if you want to add more, you can just add / and then put the next variable here. So this is how you can define environment variables using the ENV instruction. The ENV instruction sets the environment variable key to the value. And here are some examples as well. Now once I set this, you can also check if it is working or not. So I'm going to save this and run the command to build an image. So I'll say docker build -t my new image dot. Once I do this, okay, docker build. Once I do this, it will go ahead and create an image. This image should have 3 environment variables, one for app host, one for app port, and then the third one for ABC equal to XYZ. Once this image is created, I'm going to check the environment variables present inside this Docker container. Okay, so now the image has been created. Let's try to run this as a container. So I'll say docker run my new image, and then I'm going to run the command env to check what are different environment variables present inside this. So it should show me the same environment variables present here in the Dockerfile, so we can understand that env works properly. So when I run this, you will be able to see all these instructions along with the instructions that are set in the Python base image. So we can see it works. So using env, you can set the environment variables inside your containers. We all know a Docker container consists of code along with its dependencies and libraries, and we have also learned that in the previous Docker course. So now, let's say we want to copy this code from our local machine to our Docker container. How can we do that? So we can do that using the copy instruction that lets you copy something from source to destination. So the source here is a local machine and the destination is this directory here. So I'm going to say copy app.py from my local machine inside /code/. Once I do this and then now create Docker image from this Dockerfile, we should be able to see that the app.py is present inside /code folder. So I'm going to now go ahead with rebuilding this image. So docker build -t my new image dot. And you can see the copy has been executed. So if I want to check that, I can run the image as a container by saying docker run my new image and then ls/code. So when I do this, you can see app.py is present, and this is how you can copy files from one place to another using the copy instruction. You can copy files and folders from copy command. Similar to copy is the add instruction. Using add instruction, you can also copy files from one place to another. But along with that, it also has extra functionality where you can copy files from a remote location, maybe something on the internet, inside your container. Let me show you an example. So in my S3 bucket, I have a file named as token.txt, and using add instructions, I can copy that from my S3 bucket inside my container. So add instruction can copy things from local to the container, also from remote URLs like S3 buckets or anything inside the container as well. To show you that, I'm going to go ahead with building an image. So I'm going to say docker build -t new image, and then you can see it has executed the add instruction as well. To confirm, I'm going to check what is inside the code folder. So along with app.py, it should also have a file named as token.txt. So I'm going to run the same command which I ran earlier, which was docker run my new image, and check what is inside the /code folder. So when I press enter, you can see there are two files now, app.py along with token.txt. So this is how you can use add instruction, which is similar to copy, but also has an extra function where it can copy or get things from remote URLs like S3 bucket or anything on the internet. The next Docker instruction that we're going to learn is the expose instruction. So let's say you have an application which is running on port 5000. So you want the container to be listing on port 5000 or to allow inbound traffic from port 5000. And you can do that using expose command. So the expose defines the network ports that this container will listen on at runtime. It's saying expose 5000, which means I'm telling Docker to create a container which has port 5000 open. Let me show you. I'm going to go ahead with creating an image from this Docker file by saying docker build -t my new image dot. Once I do that, you can see Docker has started creating the image, and very soon we will have the image ready. So the image is ready, and to check what ports are allowed on this particular image, I'm going to use the docker inspect command. So this is a command here, docker inspect, to check this image and to see what ports are exposed on this particular image. Once I run this, you will be able to see that the port exposed is 5000, and it was done using expose docker instruction. So using expose, you can allow traffic from a particular port inside the container. So far in this Dockerfile tutorial, we have learned many different instructions, but the two very most important instructions that are responsible to run the application or the process inside the container are entry point and CMD. So entry point and CMD are the instructions in Dockerfile that will actually tell what process to run or what command to execute. Docker expects you to have either one of these inside the Dockerfile. You can also have both of them, but you need to have either one of them, which will define what is to be running inside the container. For example, if you look at the Dockerfile here, which we have used in the previous Docker course, you can see CMD command is here, which is running npm start command. So npm is the executable and the start is the parameter here. You can also check the command here, and you can see executable parameter 1, parameter 2. This similar command could also be written as entry point, and you define the executable here rather than doing it here, and then you have the parameter defined here. So this will work the same way as it was earlier. So entry point, now we have defined the executable here in the entry point, and we have defined the parameter here in the CMD. So let's try to run this and see if it actually works or not. So I'm going to go ahead with saying docker build -t img dot, which means I'm going to create an image from this Docker file, and let's see if it actually works or not. So the Docker file is ready. Let's run it by saying docker run -it. Run this on 80. So run this on port 8080 in my machine, but the container is running on port 3000, which we have exposed here. And I'll say img. So I need to also define -d and -p here. Once I do that, you will see the container is running. Let's check port 8080 now. And if it actually works, which means we have used the correct instructions. I'll say localhost port 8080. So we have the application running here, which means it works the same. So this is how you can define entry point and CMD. The entry point is where you can define the executable, and the CMD, if you have entry point already, in the CMD you need to define the parameter. This parameter could also be overridden. For example, if I show you this with another command, let's say sleep command here. So in sleep, I'm saying the parameter to be 5, which means when I run this container is going to sleep for 5 seconds. But if I want to change this or override this parameter, I can also say this. Now, instead of when I run this command, it will take this 10 and override the 5 here, which means the sleep is going to be executing for next 10 seconds rather than just 5. To understand this more properly, I know this is confusing, and to understand this more properly, you can go to the official documentation here and go through these. You can read the documentation to understand how CMD and entry point are different. Along with this, you can also check out the Stack Overflow answers here, which can help you understand more properly, or you can check out videos on YouTube. I hope this, if you have any questions regarding CMD, entry point, or any other Dockerfile instructions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. So far, we have covered almost everything apart from labels here. So label I used to give more information about the image. So you could add version of the image, or you could add who has created this image, who is the maintainer, all those things. So label instruction is used to add metadata to the image. For example, I can add a label instruction here saying that the creator is me. So label equals to key equals to value. So I can say creator of this is CloudChamp, or it could be anything. The version of this application is 2, or environment equals to prod, environment equals to development, so on. So these are all the different instructions. We have seen all these different Dockerfile instructions with hands-on. So I hope you have understood this video, and if you have any questions, any doubt, feel free to let me know. If you found this video helpful, please like this video and subscribe to CloudChamp. Thank you and have a good day.
Both